Story 1. Their healthcare system imagines having $28 trillion while citizens go broke from just one trip to the hospital. Story 2. Americans appear to have both the most intelligent and the least intelligent individuals coexisting in their country. Story 3. Lack of paid leave for maternity and paternity, as well as the significant costs associated with pregnancy and childbirth, is concerning. This bewilderment also extends to the overall cost of medical care. For a country that prides itself on being pro-life, this situation feels astonishing to me. Story 4. I am always surprised at how little students are taught in school about world affairs and politics. All the American people I have met have been very outgoing, kind, and social, so where does this lack of interest in the rest of the world come from? Story 5. It is significant. Many people overseas, especially now, keep saying how Americans need to revolt like France did. France is about the size of Texas with a population similar to that of Texas and California combined. There are 48 other states and approximately 250 million more people. Yes, we need to take action, and yes, it's no excuse. However, the numbers are a factor. Story 6. There is no single United States culture, and it is not even 50 distinct cultures. A state could have 4 or more distinct cultures, depending on location or ethnicity. Story 7. Health is a business. Christians are voting for the actual Antichrist. Guns are treated like a religion, even with an average of 1 school shooting per week. Story 8. Nearly half of our population is not white, and a large majority of us regularly interact with people of different races and cultures without any concerns. Story 9. Trump is an American from New York City who embodies everything Southerners used to criticize about Yankees. His personal life, including his marriages, children, and poor manners, reflects this. He is often rude and disrespectful. There are successful individuals who seem to throw their lives away for him. Look at Rudy Giuliani, who had significant goodwill after September 11th. All he had to do was remain silent and retire. Then he got involved with Trump. I don't know what to say. Story 10. Schools teach about cultural differences such as individualism and collectivism, but generally do not explore what these concepts mean in day-to-day life and how they impact belief systems. At its core, American individualism is centered on resource hoarding. Phrases like "my interests first," "money for me, not for you," and "your lack of resources is solely due to your decision-making" illustrate this mindset. Ironically, this occurs in one of the wealthiest countries per capita. Story 11. How casual debt is and how easy it is to take loans and credit cards out in other people's names without their knowledge. Story 12. The tax code. Imagine if credit card companies operated like the Internal Revenue Service. Keep all your receipts for the year and calculate what you owe us at the end of the year. If you're incorrect, we will impose significant penalties. Story 13. How can they live in one of the best places on earth and do nothing but believe everything around them is terrible? These are all first world problems. Story 14. I think the most difficult thing to understand about the United States is the hate and lack of sympathy that still exists today despite all the progress we have made as a society. It is astonishing to see how some people can be so heartless and unsympathetic towards others. Story 15. The massacre of Native Americans, the indigenous people of the United States, marks the beginning of the country's history with the extermination of these populations by white settlers. Story 16. How states vote similarly over time despite being ranked among their peers in various aspects, including education and average income. Story 17. From whose perspective? Those from other countries do not realize how large the United States is. We can fit one of their countries inside Texas, making it harder to gather in large numbers. Additionally, the needs of the people can vary greatly. Some believe they will go to hell for voting for a Democrat, while others are so indoctrinated that they are too afraid to vote differently from their parents, even if they are in their 50s. It is striking. Story 18. We are essentially 50 small countries in a trench coat. Culture, ideals, values, and socioeconomic status can vary greatly depending on where you are in the country. Story 19. According to Ask an American, the country is large and school buses are yellow. Story 20. Everything about it is a lie, but their propaganda and mastery of human psychology allow them to make you believe whatever they want at any given moment. Story 21. Why the focus on individualism with tendencies towards egoism and aversion to the idea of living as part of a community of solidarity. Story 22. The entire population has been influenced by the media to the extent that many re-elect a failed president who is a convicted felon and has committed serious crimes, treating it as if it is normal. I say this as an American who has not watched television for the last decade and gets news from other sources. I have observed people I once liked and respected turn into individuals spouting divisive rhetoric. When I inform them about the reality of the situation, they accuse me of being brainwashed. Story 23. We are not just one country. We are 50 distinct regions with unique concerns, goals, and cultures united in a federal democracy. The West Coast, East Coast, Upper Midwest, Mid-South, South, Southwest, and others have very different ideas on how to live and govern. Some states are larger than many countries, and their economies can surpass those of almost all nations. The United States is not a monoculture, which is both a source of strength and a challenge for our federal government. Story 24. Trump, obviously, but next to that is America's obsession with guns. It's one of the most mind-boggling things, like watching a neighbor who is a drug addict, where no calamity or downward spiral can convince them to kick the habit. Some of the conversations I have with Americans are so bizarre. Some Americans will ask me what type of gun I have, and I say that I don't have any. I have no desire or need for a gun. They can't even understand this. How can I possibly be protected? How can I protect my family? How can I even be a proper man without a gun? When I explain that as a Canadian I have never had to think about gun violence or whether someone else is carrying a gun, and that like most Canadians I am quite happy with that situation, they simply can't grasp it. To me, that is a valuable form of freedom. Not having to orient my life around gun violence, not having my kids undergo active shooter drills and all that. But the Americans I'm speaking of prioritize their right to own guns above all that. They can't truly imagine living in a reality where they don't have to worry about other people carrying firearms. And of course, the whole notion of an armed militia ready to rise up against a totalitarian government has always been nonsensical. It seems they envision a totalitarian regime with the armed population rising up against it. However, Americans have never been that united. Recent history shows, especially vividly, that some Americans are prepared to defend an authoritarian-leaning government, while the other half is utterly appalled. There is no unified populace ready to rise against the government. The distribution of guns in America simply provides the opportunity for different factions to go to war against each other if it comes down to that. Just imagine if the misguided individuals who invaded the Capitol on January 6th were better armed and more serious. How many people would want to live under their rule? Story 25. How diverse and divided we all are. It seems like the world thinks we speak with one voice, but that voice represents only the minority that speaks the loudest. Many of us are not extremist individuals. We want to help our allies and use our resources to make the world a better place. Story 26. Why are corporations allowed to operate as individuals, and what power do they have over politicians? We often think it is red versus blue or any other division they create. In reality, it is the 1% versus the world, and we allow them to win. Story 27. Why do Americans struggle to let go of their guns while most of their developed neighbors seem to do fine without them? Story 28. We are currently the United States, and there are many people here who have never traveled outside their own state, sometimes not even outside the county where they were raised. They have no concept of the world they are a part of, and there is a wide range of demographics. This place is vast. You'll find it all here in the United States. Story 29. Our self-deterministic perspective in our culture and economics is rooted in the original religious ideals of the Puritan immigrants. Story 30. Why are citizens not protesting against their president as the United States oligarchy dismantles the Constitution and undermines democracy? Story 31. Wealthy individuals are purchasing influence in the government, ignoring conflicts of interest and the healthcare system, while misguided people support this situation, either directly or indirectly. Story 32. How can those who advocate for freedom, free speech, and resistance to communism accept a state of lawlessness, threats to free speech, restrictions on freedom of movement, and a friendship with Russia, their perceived enemy in many of their favorite movies? Story 33. It is not a democracy. Multiple states are currently trying to repeal or interfere with voter-approved, citizen-initiated ballots. Here in Missouri, almost 60% voted for paid sick leave, but the House just voted to repeal it. If the Senate decides to proceed, I will simply tear up my voter registration card and never vote again because it feels meaningless. Story 34. Americans are fiercely independent and will fight against authority. We dislike being told what is best for us. Story 35. For me, the most difficult thing to understand about the United States is the healthcare system, which is why I turned down a well-paid job there. I didn't want to be involved with it in any way. In the United Kingdom, if I am sick or have an accident, I receive free healthcare. It is funded through taxation, and there are government departments that manage it. I only need to pay my taxes. There are no conditions attached to my use of the National Health Service. I do not need to be insured. There are significant problems with managing such a large system, and it is currently under threat from corporations that see an opportunity to take it over. They have been influencing our politicians for many years, attempting to privatize the whole system. Additionally, I find it difficult to understand why developers have been allowed to reshape cities by setting every building back from the street and surrounding it with parking lots. Why did this happen? Is there a way to reverse this situation? Story 36. We have a vast and diverse culture here. For example, North Texas has a completely different culture than West Texas, and South Texas is distinct from Central and North Texas. East Texas resembles Louisiana but is still in Texas. Americans are also friendlier than many people think. Additionally, the size of everything in America is enormous, and you do not realize just how expansive it is until you travel across the country. Story 37. Why has the country that has enjoyed the freest access to information for the longest time of any country on Earth repeatedly chosen ignorance, especially since knowledge is power and ignorance is weakness? Story 38. For me, the issue with guns is that while people are allowed to possess them to stand against the government, they are often misused in school shootings, suicides, and crimes. This situation is quite troubling. Story 39. I could never understand that the country that hosts great scientists at prestigious universities like Harvard relies heavily on thoughts and prayers when it comes to crimes, social issues, and politics. Science and religion are not meant to align in this way. Story 40. Why a political party determines how much hate you have toward others baffles me. It is surprising how divided the United States is over who someone votes for. Story 41. How the world's greatest power is headed towards becoming a fascist dictatorship, and nobody is doing anything to stop it. Story 42. We do not have a national public transit system. It would be great to not have to depend on a car for commuting to work. Story 43. That public life outside the internet for the average citizen in this country is peaceful, friendly, and productive. At least for now. Story 44. How arrogant and selfish the average American is. They are the richest nation on earth. Yet, much poorer countries manage to provide universal health care, free higher education, and schools free of mass casualty incidents. They could have that too, but that would imply a fairer redistribution of wealth and an understanding that paying taxes to help people you may not like is not a cardinal sin. Story 45. The most powerful country in the world can be taken over by a single 78-year-old man who eats at McDonald's every day. Story 46. Where the belief of superiority comes from. Unfortunately, I must inform you that there is nothing exceptional about you. Story 47. They do not have a true culture, but an amalgamation of foreign cultures all combined to create the illusion of culture. They utilized Hollywood to achieve this. Now that social media has taken over, the cracks are starting to show, and Hollywood is no longer relevant. The entire country is experiencing culture shock. Story 48. The disturbing issue of genital mutilation and circumcision raises serious ethical questions. How can Americans accept such practices on non-consenting children? Story 49. With its vast size, people often overlook its diversity. There are many different cultures across the country. However, individuals expect everything to be similar to their hometowns and resist embracing new experiences. Visiting a tourist trap does not provide an authentic experience. Many people prefer sameness over variety. Story 50. How difficult it is to leave. I am trying to obtain dual citizenship through Ancestry, and it can take 7 to 10 years because it is challenging to secure appointments once all the documentation is gathered to provide proof. Story 51. The system of checks and balances that should have prevented this scenario from ever occurring failed spectacularly and abysmally, and now the world is suffering for it. Story 52. I feel that many non-Americans still believe someone will intervene to stop Trump from doing whatever he wants with the police and military, or that the military will suddenly turn against him. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.